The first time I met Ethan, it felt like the world exhaled. It was early autumn, that perfect in-between season when the air smells like rain and something nostalgic you can't name. I was sitting alone in a corner cafe, pretending to read, when he walked in, tall, a little disheveled, with that kind of careless confidence that made you notice him even before he spoke. He ordered his coffee black. No sugar. No hesitation. Then he turned and our eyes met, just long enough for something quiet but undeniable to pass between us. "Is this seat taken?" he asked, motioning toward the chair across from me. "It depends," I said, raising an eyebrow. "Are you one of those people who talk through the entire morning?" He laughed. "Only when the company's good." It started like that, a conversation that never really ended. We met again the next morning. Then again the next week. The barista started remembering our orders, his black coffee, my cappuccino with extra foam. We'd talk about everything and nothing. The books that shaped us, the mistakes we hadn't forgiven ourselves for, the strange comfort of late-night drives with no destination. Ethan had a way of seeing the world like it was something sacred. He noticed small things, the flicker of a streetlight, the sound of rain against windows, the way my hands shook when I was nervous. "You hide it well," he said once. "Hide what?" "The part of you that's afraid to be seen." And just like that he disarmed me. Our first kiss wasn't planned. We were walking home under a soft drizzle, laughing about something stupid. I slipped on the wet sidewalk and he caught me. His hands on my waist, his breath warm against my skin. Neither of us moved. "Are you okay?" he whispered. "I think so." Then he kissed me, slow and unsure at first, like he was memorizing the moment. And when we pulled away, I realized something terrifying. I just found the person who could break me completely. But back then all I felt was light. We spent that fall wrapped in each other, late-night drives, quiet mornings, shared playlists and whispered dreams. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. The kind of love that feels like it was waiting for you all along. Sometimes I still remember the way he looked at me that night, like I was something rare. Something worth believing in. If I'd known how fleeting it would all be, maybe I'd have held him tighter. Maybe I'd have told him more often how much I needed him. But when you're in love, you never think about endings. You only think about how it feels to finally be seen. It started so quietly that I almost missed it. A little fatigue here. A dizzy spell there. Just small, forgettable moments that felt like the cost of living too fast. But then the exhaustion didn't go away. And neither did the fog. Ethan noticed first. He always noticed. "You okay?" he asked one morning as I stared too long at my coffee, watching the foam dissolve. "Yeah," I said automatically. "Just tired." He nodded, but I could tell he didn't believe me. His eyes followed me that day, every small stumble, every time I lost my words mid-sentence. A few days later I dropped a glass in the kitchen. It shattered across the floor, and my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Ethan was there in seconds, kneeling beside me, his voice breaking. Hey, it's fine. Don't move." But I couldn't stop crying. Not from the glass, not from pain, but from the terrifying feeling that something inside me was slipping out of reach. After the test, the hospital smell stayed with me. That sterile metallic scent that makes everything feel temporary. The doctor spoke softly, her words careful and heavy. A neurological condition. Rare. Unpredictable. Degenerative. I remember the silence that followed. It wasn't shock, it was surrender. A quiet, invisible fracture inside us both. Ethan tried to stay strong. He asked questions, demanded answers, promised we'd figure it out. But I could see it in his eyes, the disbelief, the quiet terror. At home he built me a fortress of care. Vitamins lined the counter. My calendar filled with appointments. He read every article, watched every medical video, searched for hope in places that didn't have any. But something else began to change, not just in my body but between us. I started to feel like a ghost in my own home. My laughter grew quieter, my light dimmer. Even my reflection seemed like someone fading away from herself. One night, I found Ethan sitting alone in the dark, his face buried in his hands. "You're scaring me," I whispered. He looked up and for a moment I saw the boy who once made me believe in forever. "I'm scared too," he said, voice trembling. "I don't know how to love someone who's slipping." I reached for him, but my fingers wouldn't move the way they used to. It was the cruelest kind of distance, being close enough to touch but too broken to reach. That night, when he held me, I could feel his heartbeat fighting for both of us. And in that quiet, trembling space, I realized something. The saddest part of illness isn't losing yourself. It's watching the person you love lose you first. Every morning after that, I woke to the same prayer. That he'd still look at me the way he did that first night in the rain. That he'd still see me beneath the fading glow. But even love, no matter how strong, can't stop the slow unraveling of time. Ethan stopped talking as much after that. Not out of anger or indifference, but because words had started failing him too. There are only so many times you can say it's going to be okay before you start hearing how hollow it sounds. Our house used to be full of noise, his humming while he cooked, my laughter echoing from the hallway. The sound of our lives blending together in small, ordinary music. Now it was quiet. Too quiet. He still took care of me. He still made my tea just the way I liked it. Too much honey, not enough patience. But his eyes, they carried something I couldn't touch. A kind of sadness that lives behind the ribs, where love turns into grief that hasn't learned its name yet. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night and find him sitting on the edge of the bed, staring out the window. The blue glow of the streetlight painted him in ghost light. "What are you thinking about?" I'd whisper. He'd turn, smile faintly and lie. "Just the stars." But I knew he was thinking about us. About everything we were losing in slow motion. He became obsessed with research. Medical journals, trial reports, late-night emails to specialists across the world. I'd watch him at his laptop, shoulders tense, eyes flickering with a kind of desperate hope that broke my heart more than my illness ever could. "Ethan," I said one night, my voice barely above a whisper, "you need to rest." "I can't," he said. "Not while you're." He stopped mid-sentence, swallowing the word dying. Instead, he reached for my hand, squeezing it like it was the only thing keeping him tethered to the earth. I wanted to tell him that he didn't need to fix me. That what I needed most wasn't a cure. It was him. His laughter, his warmth, his presence. But every time I tried, the words came out like smoke, soft, shapeless, disappearing before they reached him. The silence between us wasn't empty. It was full of everything we were too afraid to say. One afternoon he came home with flowers, daisies my favorite. But he didn't say a word when he handed them to me. His eyes were glassy, his smile forced. I realized then that silence had become his language. His way of grieving before he had to. I placed the flowers in a vase and said quietly, "You don't have to stay strong all the time." He looked at me then, really looked, and I saw the storm behind his calm. "If I break," he whispered, "who's going to hold you together?" My throat tightened. Maybe we hold each other. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The room filled with the sound of rain tapping on the windows, steady and endless. That night, when he finally fell asleep beside me, I stayed awake, tracing the lines of his face with my eyes, memorizing every shadow. Because I knew deep down that love like this, the quiet breaking kind, only exists once. And when silence becomes the only language left between two people, it means something sacred is ending. The day everything changed, the world looked ordinary. The kind of gray morning where nothing feels special except it was. It was the day Ethan discovered the truth. He had gone to another specialist in the city, a new neurologist who'd agreed to review my case. I told him not to go, that I was tired of hearing the same rehearsed apologies from people in white coats. But he went anyway, hope still burning in him like the last stubborn ember of a dying fire. When he came home that night, something in his face had hardened. His hands shook as he set his keys down. I could feel the air shift before he even spoke. "They knew," he said quietly. "Who did?" "The hospital. Your first doctors. They knew about a treatment trial 6 months ago. They just didn't tell us." My stomach dropped. "What are you talking about?" "There was a spot," he said. "They said you weren't a suitable candidate. Too complicated. Too risky." He laughed bitterly. Too human, apparently. I stared at him, speechless. The words landed like blows I couldn't defend against. Ethan began pacing the room, anger building with every breath. I begged them for help. I sent them everything. They let us sit here believing there was nothing left. I'd never seen him like that. Not just angry but betrayed. Like someone had stolen the last fragile piece of hope he'd been clinging to. I wanted to reach for him, but my body wouldn't cooperate. My illness had taken so much already, my strength, my clarity, my independence. And now it had taken this moment too. He stopped suddenly, staring at me as if remembering I was still there. The rage in his eyes softened into heartbreak. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I should have known. I should have done more." I shook my head weakly. "Ethan, you've done everything. Please don't blame yourself." But he did. I could see it in every trembling exhale. He wasn't angry at the doctors anymore. He was angry at himself for believing them, for trusting the system, for not being able to save me. That night he stayed awake beside me, whispering plans into the dark, names of lawyers, medical boards, anyone who might listen. And for the first time I saw how love could turn into something dangerous, something reckless. In the days that followed, Ethan became consumed by his mission. He made calls, wrote letters, demanded accountability. It was like watching a storm gather momentum, all fury and purpose powered by grief. But even through his rage, he never stopped holding me, never stopped tucking the blanket around my shoulders, never stopped whispering, "We'll make this right." I knew he wasn't doing it for revenge. He was doing it because he couldn't stand the idea of losing without a fight. Because fighting for me made him feel like I was still here, still his to protect. And maybe I was. For a little while longer. When he finally crawled into bed beside me that night, exhausted and quiet, I turned to him and said, "Ethan, love me more than you hate them." He froze and then nodded. His forehead pressed against mine, and for a long time we just breathed together in the dark. That was the night I realized something cruel but true. When love becomes war, no one really wins. Love changes people. But no one ever tells you how uneven that change can be. How one person fades while the other hardens just to survive the loss. Ethan wasn't the same man anymore. The boy who once laughed in the rain, who believed the universe made room for miracles, was gone. In his place stood someone quieter, sharper around the edges, like a blade worn thin from being used too often. He moved through life with purpose now. Everything had structure. Medication schedules taped to the fridge. Emergency numbers memorized. His phone never left his pocket. Even his hugs felt different, firmer, protective, like he was afraid I might shatter if he loosened his grip. I watched him carefully because I knew what he was giving up. He stopped seeing his friends, stopped talking about the future. His dreams narrowed until they were small enough to carry, until they were just me. And while part of me felt honored by that devotion, another part felt unbearably guilty. One afternoon, while he helped me sit by the window, I finally asked the question that had been burning inside me. "Do you ever miss who you used to be?" He didn't answer right away. He stared outside, watching people pass by, strangers with full lives, unaware of how fragile everything really was. "I don't remember him anymore," he said quietly. "I just remember why he disappeared." That answer broke something in me. Love had reshaped him, not gently but forcefully. It had taught him discipline, patience, endurance, but it had also taken his light. He smiled less, slept poorly. A constant tension lived in his shoulders, like he was bracing for an impact that never stopped coming. Still, he never complained. On my worst days, when my body refused to cooperate and frustration turned into tears, he would kneel in front of me and press his forehead to mine. "I'm here," he'd whisper. "You don't have to be strong today." I wanted to scream that he didn't have to be strong either. That I could see the cracks forming beneath his calm. That loving me was costing him pieces of himself he might never get back. But instead, I held his face in my trembling hands and said, "You've already given me more than enough." He shook his head. "There's no such thing." That was when I realized the cruelest truth of all. Love hadn't just changed him, it had consumed him. And even knowing that, even watching the toll it took, he never once stepped away. He carried the weight of both our fears, both our futures, as if that was simply the price of loving someone deeply. As the seasons changed outside our window, I began to understand something terrifying and beautiful. Ethan wasn't staying because he believed he could save me. He was staying because loving me had become the most honest version of himself. And even if it destroyed him, he would choose it again. There are moments when you know, not with fear, not with panic, but with a quiet certainty that settles deep in your bones. The morning I woke up unable to lift my hand, I knew. Ethan was already awake. He always was. He sat beside me on the bed, my fingers wrapped in his like they belonged there. His thumb traced slow circles against my skin, grounding me in the only way left. "You're here," he said softly, like he needed to convince himself. "So are you," I whispered. The day moved gently, as if the world itself had learned how fragile I was. Sunlight spilled through the curtains, painting the walls gold. Somewhere outside, life went on, cars passing, people laughing, time refusing to stop just because we needed it to. Ethan talked to me about ordinary things. A movie we never finished. A road trip we never took. The coffee shop where we first met. "I was late that day," he smiled faintly. 23 minutes, I said. He laughed, and for a moment he was himself again. As the hours passed, my body grew heavier, quieter. Breathing felt like walking uphill. Ethan noticed before I said anything. He always did. "Stay," he whispered, pressing his forehead to mine. "Just a little longer." I wanted to tell him that I wasn't leaving him, that love doesn't disappear just because the body does. But words felt unnecessary now. Everything that mattered had already been said. In the way he held me, in the way he never once let me feel alone. When the pain finally softened, I felt strangely peaceful. Like slipping into warm water after a long winter. Ethan's tears fell onto my hand, hot and real. "I don't know who I am without you," he said, his voice breaking. I gathered every last piece of strength I had and squeezed his fingers. "You're the man who loved me," I whispered. "That's enough. That will always be enough." Those were my last words. If love could hurt this deeply, I realized it was because it had been real, because it had mattered, because it had changed us both in ways time could never undo. I like to think that after I was gone, Ethan stayed. Not frozen in grief, but moving forward with me, quietly stitched into his days. In rainstorms, in coffee cups, in the spaces where laughter used to live. Love doesn't end when someone leaves. It just learns how to live with the ache. And if pain is the price of loving someone completely, then I would choose it again. Every time. Because some love stories aren't meant to last forever. They're meant to last enough.